We have been introduced to RMI technology, what RMI is and what it can do for us. Now, let's have a look at RMI architecture. This architecture will describe the components and its structure of RMI. This is an overview of RMI architecture. There are three main components in the architecture, which are client host, server host, and RMI registry host. Let's have a look at the server host. There are three main components in the server host, which are server object interface, server object, and server skeleton. The server object interface is an interface that inherits from one of the special interface from Java RMI framework. This is the interface that enables method to be invoked remotely. The server object interface will be implemented by the server object, where concrete implementation will be provided by this object. The server object is an instance of server class. Finally, the third object, which is server skeleton. Server skeleton is an object that resides in the server host. This object communicates between the client and the actual server object. Now, let's have a look at the second component in the architecture. The second component is known as the client host. There are also three components in the client host, which are the server object interface, the client program, and the server stub. The server object interface is the same interface that resides in the server host. The client host needs this interface so that it can manipulate it as local object. The client program is a program that will invoke the method in the remote server. The server object interface is used in the client program. Finally, the third component known as server stub. This component is an object that resides in the client host. This object is substitute object to the remote server. And the last component in the architecture known as RMI Registry Host. This component is a utility that registers the remote object. It provides naming services for the remote object. The naming service will be used by the client to refer to the remote object. The communication between the client and the server on remote object is happen at the server stub and the server skeleton. These two objects are automatically generated by Java. The three components, which are the client host, the server host, and the RMI registry host, will be interacting with one another. The server host will register the remote server object in the RMI registry host. RMI registry is something like a directory for remote object. It contains reference name to the remote object. The client will look for the remote object in the registry. When the client found the remote object, the registry will return a server stub to the client. The server stub is the object that allows the client to sort of import the remote object into the client host. When the client invokes method in the remote object, the communication is established between the server stub and the skeleton stub.